Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with a beginner's guide to Total War Warhammer. This video is going to discuss troop movement, and while the topic sounds simple, it's actually a bit more complex than the game leads you to believe. I've got this small selection of troops here to show you a variety of ways to order your troops around on the battlefield. First, let's talk about troop selection. Very easily, you can left-click to select units that are on the field directly by clicking on them, or you can click on the cards below to select units as well. Alternatively, you can actually draw a box around a clump of units on the battlefield to mass select units, and that's really good, especially if the battle started to spread a little bit and you'd like to select a clump of units. Very quick, very efficient. You can also control-click to select specific units. So let's say I want these two spearmen and this archer. What I can do is I can control-click, select the first one, and then while holding down control, select the second one and the third one. And this works for an infinite number of units. You can control-click to select a variety of shapes, and just gives you some finesse control over exactly who you're picking. This also works in the unit cards, so you can control-click to select the units you'd like, and then proceed to give them orders. You can also use shift selection. Now that works better with these cards, I find, because let's say I'd like to select this line of spearmen. I'll select the first one, and then shift-click on the endpoint, and basically a line is created and anything that falls in that line is selected. Now that's great with cards as well, because I can select the first unit, shift select the last one, and everything gets selected. The reason I don't use it on the field so often is because it's a little unpredictable with stranger shapes. So let's say I select this first spearman here and shift click this archer unit, it creates this L shape. Now sometimes it won't make that L shape, it'll just go between these two. Again, it depends on this arbitrary line that the game draws between your first and last selection. So I tend not to use that so much on the field itself, more so with the cards. Now, with selection out of the way, let's talk about basic movement. There's a few ways to give orders to your troops in the simplest form. A simple left click to select, and then right click to move, or a left click to select and a double right click to run. Now, if you have your units moving in this fashion, again, a single right click is move and a double is run, it's important to keep that in mind, because you don't want your units running everywhere. Fatigue is extremely important. Tired units do not fight as well, and they also move slowly. So in a longer engagement, you want to maintain as much energy as possible, so you'd prefer to be giving march orders as opposed to run orders. Slows your units down, but helps them survive for longer. Now this kind of movement, this kind of order rather, is really helpful for snap commands. Let's say we've got the enemy heading towards us, and all of a sudden they decide to split into two and flank us. It would be very time-consuming for me to go in and give nuanced orders to each unit individually. Instead, I can select half my army, tell them to go here, select the other half, tell them to go here, and then they'll rush over. Now, I double right-click to run. I'm simulating, I'm being attacked on flanks. I need to rush into position. Now, this is great because I've got my units moving. I can now go in and finesse these commands and place them exactly how I want them to, and I'm not falling behind. If instead I went in and gave these orders one by one, laying out the formations as the enemy's flanking me, I might miss a side entirely, and the next thing you know, I'm destroyed. I'm completely wrecked because I couldn't get into position quickly enough. So that's where I use basic move commands, because it's extremely helpful to get a bulk order happening, and then I can go in and finesse afterwards. You can also give waypoint-based orders. Let's say I'd like my two spearmen here to actually loop around these archers and come down here. I can send them directly south, let's call it, but they'll walk right through my archers, as you'll see. Now that's not good. It'll clump up, artillery fire, archer fire. This is a dream for the enemy. Instead, I want to give them waypoint commands, and I can do that by holding down Shift and then hitting the right mouse button. Now, the first order will still stay saved, so what you actually need to do is you need to click away and then hold Shift and queue up these waypoints. Very important to note, a unit will not move further until it arrives at that first waypoint. Now, this is especially important when these troops are grouped together, as I'll show you later, because right now these units are individual, so when this unit arrives at its first waypoint, as you'll see, it'll just simply move on to the next one. But when troops are moving in groups, they'll actually wait for the group to move forward before moving on to the next waypoint. Again, I'll show you how that works later. So let's talk about a slightly more finessed way of laying out your units. Let's say I'd like to create a line of spearmen with archers in front. The enemy's far away, I'm not afraid for their safety, so let's get our spearmen. I've got my spearmen selected, and I'm going to right-click and drag out their ranks. Now this is great because it gives me control over the width and the depth of their ranks. What that means is in different situations, I can control how wide or shallow or deep the layout actually is. This is extremely helpful again because let's say I'm defending an urban alleyway, I could have a thin, deep rank. Whereas if I'm trying to block off a canyon, I might want to go as wide as possible. So it's super helpful and you can get extremely finessed with that. Now, I wanted my archers in front of them, so let's get my archers selected, but I don't remember exactly where my spearmen are going to end up. So what I can do is I can press spacebar, and the user interface will show me exactly where they're going to line up. Now, while I have spacebar selected, I still have control over everything. The map, unit selection, I can see everything. So I know where my units are going to end up, I select my archers, and then I can right-click and drag and tell them where to end up. And this is extremely helpful again because if I have a massive army and I'm trying to get everything organized, holding down spacebar will let me know where things are going to end up, and it keeps me in control. Now you'll notice when I give this order, everyone's always running to their destination. It's important to keep in mind, unless I've given a basic move command, which is just a simple right-click, your units will be running. As I mentioned, that's bad for energy levels, it's really bad for fatigue, so you want to keep an eye on that and hit R to slow them down to keep them from running everywhere. So again, let's say I've got these units selected and I want them to just thin out a little bit further. I can do that, they're going to start running, so I hit R, and instead, they're going to march into position instead. And you can tell if they're running or marching with these little arrows that appear above their head when moving. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about rotating units. Let's say I've got this little formation laid out, and I'm happy with how it's working. I've got the enemy heading up towards me, but they slowly start to veer left or right because they want to flank me. I want to make sure that they stay in my front lines. I want to keep them in front of me at all times. So what I can do is I can select all of these units, and I can hold down Control and then use the left or right arrow key to rotate them in their positions. Now they'll run, again, unless it's a basic move order, they'll always run. They'll run to these new positions. This is extremely helpful when you're trying to do some finer movements without having to click and drag and click and drag and click and drag until everyone's in position. It's very quick, very efficient, and it just gets your units to move as quickly as possible. Now you'll see here I wasn't paying attention to this rock, so now my formation's broken. Situational awareness is very important. Again, for a split second there, I just wasn't looking, and now my formation's broken. Any order I give will now stick to this new formation instead, so I do have to go in and fix that. A little frustrating, yes, but again, being a good general is all about being aware of what's going on, and in fact, for example, using these obstacles to hold off entire positions from an enemy advance. Now, in terms of advancing, let's talk about formations. Let's fix this formation first. Do this really quick. Line these guys up nicely, and speed it up just so you don't have to wait and watch. Okay, so let's say I want to advance towards the enemy in this formation. There's a few ways I can do that. First off, I can just select the units, and then holding down Alt, I can click anywhere on the battlefield, and I'll get this little movement icon. Now I can drag the mouse around while still holding Alt and the left mouse button, and I can see exactly where my units are going to end up. This is great because it gives me an idea of where I am and where I'm ending up. And what I can also do, let's say I want to move forward and actually turn to face the army, the enemy army, I can select my position and then hold down Control. I have not let go of any of the other buttons. Still have the left mouse button held down, still have Alt held down. I also hold down Control, and now I can rotate their facing as well. So their destination's facing can be different from how they started. Now again, this is extremely helpful because I can hold down Control, rotate, let go of Control, reposition, get really nuanced and finessed about exactly how I want this to end up, and then I just have to let go of the left mouse button and they'll run their way over. Again, I want them to march instead, so I'm just going to hit R, and now they're going to march their way over to their end position, which I can see by holding down spacebar. Now, let's say while they're doing that, quick sidebar, I notice a flank come up, or there is a unit that I hadn't seen because it was hidden, and now I can see it. and I need them to stop because they're heading into a trap. A quick backspace makes all your units stop exactly where they are. Now, it might break your formation a little bit, but it can be the difference between life and death. You can fall right into a trap if you don't react that quickly, and this is the fastest way to get your units to stop moving, the backspace button, or key, I guess. Now, apart from that, there are a few other ways to move your units in formation. For example, let's actually group these units together. There's a couple ways to do that. I can hold down Control and then press 1, 2, 3. Just like any other real-time strategy game, this sets a numerical value to them. So I can then later on select them by pressing that number down. However, if I've grouped them like this, I still lose the formation if I try to give them a move order. It breaks everything. I need to have them locked in formation, and to do that, I either click on this lock icon here, or I hit Ctrl-G with the group selected. Now let's just break this group quickly, tap G to break the group. Alternatively, what I can do is, with the units selected, I just hit Ctrl-G. What that does is it automatically groups them, locks the group in formation, and assigns the next available number. So now they're group number 1, and I can select them by just tapping 1 on the keyboard. When this happens and they're locked in formation as well, I can give a basic move command, the simple right click, so they will march, because it's a basic command, but they will also maintain their formation. Now, because of the backspace, as I mentioned, the formation is a little broken, but they will maintain that as well. Extremely helpful to keep in mind, and it's just a helpful way to maintain the shape of your army as you're moving forward. Because again, you want to keep your lines solid, you want to make sure you're not open for a flanking maneuver, and this is the best way to keep control and a sense of decorum. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you actually set up waypoints with a group selected, let's say you're doing a massive rotation, the unit that's closer to one point, let's actually set that up here. So I'm having them rotate counterclockwise. These troops will reach their destination a lot sooner than these troops will. So let's speed it up a little bit because you can see the effect in any speed. So they reach their first waypoint, and everybody actually waits until everybody arrives at the destination before moving on to the next point. So you'll see this unit of spears arrives at their destination, and then they wait until everybody arrives, and then they continue. So that's very important to keep in mind when you're trying to set these waypoints up. You don't want to end up in an engagement when you didn't want to, simply because you set up waypoints without realizing the order that it's going to take place in, or how long it'll take your troops to actually get there. Now, I've done this quick little move here. I've actually got my army facing the wrong way now, but that's okay because it sets me up for the next pointer. If I've got this set up and I notice that the army is trying to flank me from behind, and I quickly want to turn my spearmen around to brace for the charge, I can select the individual units and tap J to get them to rotate, or to about turn rather. It's a little frustrating because they do move forward rather than just staying steady where they are and, spinning 180 degrees. They maintain their rank and file and actually shift their position completely. It's very important to keep in mind this order should only be given in as individual orders. Never select a bunch of units and tap J, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. First, I just want to go over, again, the basics that we talked about. You can always right-click to move an order individually, even if they're in a group. A single right-click is a march order. A double right-click is a run order or a charge order when it comes to attacking. You can use waypoints to help circumvent and circumnavigate enemy clumps. So if you want to set up a flank, using waypoints to shift and right-click is a great way to do that. And setting up groups is a great way to control exactly how your troops are going to look and how they're going to end up. And never forget to use the spacebar key. It's super helpful to keep an eye on exactly where your units are going to end up, so you can arrange your movements accordingly. Now, I spent a little bit of time saying never select a clump of units and press J. Now, here's why I told you never to do that. This is the end of the tutorial, and that's why I've left this until this point, because it'll mess everything up. So I've got all my units selected, and all I want them to do is face the other direction. You'd think that'd be easy enough, but I hit J, and I get this beauty. For more tips and tricks, subscribe to this channel, and if there's something you'd like to see covered, let me know in the comments below.